Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be looking at a couple of different Pokemon Trainer sprites that come with the default Pokemon Essentials that you can download, and some different fan game Pokemon sprites, and I'm going to be talking about what I do and don't like about each different character sprite. Now if you stick around to the end, I have a special announcement to make, but let's get into the video. So this first Pokemon character trainer sprite that I have is actually pretty nice. And what I really like about this one is the different shadows and highlights that he has. As you can see, they put a ton of work into the highlights here. You can see his hair is a lighter color in the highlight area and a darker color where there's shadows. Same thing with his jacket here, and then the front of his leg has some highlights, and then on the bottom and the back here some shadows. What I also like about his hair is that they used these kind of pixels to outline the different strands, and in the lighter highlight areas they have lighter pixels, and in the darker shadow areas they use darker pixels to kind of make those strands. Same thing with his pants, they used darker pixels to draw in the details in the shadow areas, and then lighter pixels to draw in the details in the highlight areas. Another thing that I really liked is the color scheme here that they used. Now generally if you're drawing with cool colors, you want to try to stick with cool colors. If you have hot colors, that can kind of detract from the picture and make it clash in kind of an ugly way. So they used blue and purple here, like different shades of blue and purple to go together, and the only red that's in the entire picture is in this Pokeball here. And generally your eyes are attracted to the hot colors a little bit more, so your eyes are attracted to that Pokeball, and that's kind of like the first thing that you notice in that picture, and then you notice the rest of the character. It just kind of flows through nicely. Now if you had made his shirt like say bright orange or bright red, and you tried to put that with the scarf and the hair that are those blue cold colors, it would look kind of ugly. Another thing that I wanted to point out is I really like how they did the outline here. Instead of just using straight black pixels all the way around, they used some darker pixels that are just a shade darker than the color that they're outlining. Now I went ahead here and drew in the outline as being all black, and you can see when the outline is completely black, it does look a little bit amateurish, and it doesn't look as nice and polished as when the outline is nice and faded like this. And also it gives some more character to the highlight areas, because you can see here where they did the highlight where the sun is supposed to be shining, they used no black pixels at all, so it's a little easier to tell that that's the side where the lighting is on. So moving on to this next picture here of this other trainer, what I like about this is they kind of did the lighting so it's from the top down. So you can see like on the top here are the more lit areas, on the bottom are the more shadow areas, and all of his clothes and his legs and everything. Another thing that I like with him is the way that they did his mouth. So it almost kind of looks like he's smiling a little bit or has his mouth open, because they used that one brighter pixel there, versus in the first picture they just have a straight line for his mouth, so it doesn't look as interesting. It looks a little more somber or melancholy. And this one, it gives him a little bit more personality, like a young boy who's kind of smiling, excited for a Pokemon battle. And then same thing in this one too, where the outline is not just completely 100% black pixels, they also use those darker colors of the shade that they're outlining. Another thing that I just wanted to point out here too is when they draw in these different colors, if you go to this color wheel down here and you look at the different shades, you can see that they actually have the saturation turned down a significant bit here, and they also have the value turned down a little bit too. Now you don't really want it to be at full 100% saturation, because if you do that every time, it looks pretty amateurish and not very professional. So if I go to the effects or the adjustments here and I turn up the saturation, you can see that it starts to look pretty ugly. So you really wouldn't want every single time to just be drawing in one of these plain default colors that you can select here. You want to always try to customize them and turn down that saturation and maybe turn down the value a little bit so you get like a nice shade of that color. You just don't get that 100% pure saturation. And if I go back to this first picture too, and I do the same thing where I just boost that saturation, you can see it starts to look real ugly. It doesn't look quite as polished as it did before. Even the red of the Pokeball, when that saturation is turned up all the way, that looks kind of ugly. It doesn't look like a normal Pokeball. So moving on to the next trainer sprite, what I really like about this one is it's a bit unique and different than the others in that it has like something going on in the picture. It has a bunch of motion. Now if I go ahead and I change the color on this background layer here, you can see what's going on a little bit better. You can see there's this nice spray of snow and her hair is flying out behind her, and that kind of gives a sense of motion in the picture, that she's like moving around in a certain direction. Also what I like about this one is they kind of made like the foreground be the part that has all the lighting on it, and then the background be the part that has all the shadow on it. So if you look like her front leg that's here, and then her front arm and everything, that is the part that is lit up, and this back arm and this back leg here are the part that are in shadow. So that's kind of cool in that it just gives it more of a sense of depth and motion, like there's action going on in the picture. What I really like about this next picture here is that they went ahead and actually made this string here disappear, which let me go ahead and change the background color again so you guys can see it a little bit better. And you can see there's actually parts of that fishing line that have disappeared, and that's kind of what you would normally see in real life too, is when that sun is shining on a fishing line, you only kind of catch little glimpses of it and the parts that the sun is glaring off of it, and other parts that are more in shadow just look like they're invisible or they've kind of disappeared. I also kind of like the expression that they have on his face here. It's kind of more calm and chill. If you can see, they put these pixels above and to the sides of his pupil just to kind of give him a more relaxed look on his face. Whereas like this girl, if you look back at her, the pixel is more like facing down a little bit, so it looks like she's kind of like squinting or concentrating. This guy, the pixels are on top, so it looks like he's a little bit more chill. And then this guy, you can see again, those pixels are kind of like facing down in a diagonal line, so he looks more like he's concentrated, ready to go. He just looks a little more different. But this guy, his expression just looks chill because they put those pixels on the top as opposed to on the side. Now let's take a look at the next sprite. What I really like about this one is the expression that he has on his face. As you can see, the way that they did his mouth, it kind of looks like he's like maybe chewing some gum or puffing out his cheek in concentration. It gives it a bit of a different feel than the other ones where they've mostly just had straight lines. And same thing with his eyes, he's kind of squinting down a little bit more. And then I just thought that the position that he's in and like the fact that he's wearing a baseball glove and a cap were just pretty cool as well. Moving on to the next trainer sprite, we have Giovanni here. Now what I really like about this one is the way that they did the lighting. If you look back to this previous trainer sprite, you can see the lighting they did here was top down, which is pretty normal. Like, you know, it's a sunny day, that's what you would expect. You'd expect to see the sunlight on the top and the shadows on the bottom. But with Giovanni, they did it a little bit differently. They did the lighting from the bottom and the shadows from the top. Now, if you think about like when you would sit around a campfire and tell spooky ghost stories, you'd actually hold the flashlight underneath your face to light yourself up. And of course you did this so you didn't blind yourself, but it also kind of made you look real spooky because the lighting is opposite to what you would expect, which is top down from the sun, and it's bottom up. So it gives you like a sinister kind of feel. Everything's real spooky, it creeps you out, it's just something isn't right. So now if Giovanni was lit like a normal person, I'm sure he wouldn't look that suspicious, he'd just look like an average businessman. But since they did the lighting from below, you can tell that he looks pretty sinister. And maybe you don't even realize this, but you just look at that sprite and you're like, man, he's a bad dude, like he looks like he's up to something. So that's really cool, just the fact that they changed the way the shading looked, completely changed the entire feel of the character. And instead of looking like a regular businessman, he looks like a very sinister, evil person. The next trainer sprite that I wanted to look at is this one here of Flannery. Now what I really like here is the way that they did her eye and her mouth. In this one they made it look like she's squinting her eyes, like she's closed them because she's happy and she's shouting. And I just thought that's pretty cool. It's different than the way that most of the character sprites are. It gives her a pretty unique, excited expression. And then you can also see that they did the same thing with the colors and the saturation, where it's not at 100% on all the saturations and everything, even for the reds and the blues here. And then another interesting thing is that although they did have this kind of clash between the hot colors and the cold colors, what it actually does is it draws your eyes to the top part of the picture first, where there's the most red, and then you kind of like notice the bottom part later on, so it kind of like directs you to her expression first, which is kind of like excited or happy, and that's like the first thing that you see. The next character sprite I'm going to look at is this one of Cynthia here. Now what I really like about her is the way that they did her clothing, because as you can see it's mostly black, but none of her clothing is really 100% completely black. They just use different shades of gray to give it different kinds of lighting. They really only use black on the outline and the details. And then another thing that I like here is the way they did the trim on her cape here. And the sleeves, it kind of makes it look more like it's fuzzy or like there's a fur trim by doing this little checker grid pattern. If you zoom out a little bit, you're like, oh yeah, that looks like kind of fur. Versus if they had just left it as another shade of gray, you probably wouldn't really be able to tell that as much. Then I also like the way that they did her hair here. They used a whole bunch of different shades of yellow to give her like that blonde look. She's got a whole bunch of different highlights and shadows here. And then they used a bunch of different colored pixels to make it look like she has different strands of hair going on. So I just thought that was pretty interesting to look at. The next one I wanted to look at is this trainer sprite here. Now I really like the fact that although they didn't give him a shirt, they still used those darker pixels to kind of give him an outline of his muscles to make it look more interesting. It would not look that great if it was just completely plain skin colored. And then I also like the fact that he has a bit of a different expression here. He's got some thicker eyebrows, he's got a mustache going on, and you can actually see his teeth in this picture too. So it makes it look like he's more like excited, ready to go, than like angry or scary or nasty looking. And finally, the last picture that I wanted to look at is just of Alder here. Now, it can be kind of difficult to draw the Pokeballs sometimes, so I like that he has a whole bunch of Pokeballs around his neck here. If I need it in later pictures, I can just copy paste them and, edit them to the way that I need them. And then also just the positioning that he's in here. He's, smiling, he's squinting his eyes, he's looking like determined and ready to go, and he's got his legs crossed. So that's definitely something that I just want to keep in my back pocket for later on in case I need to redraw that kind of expression or position, because you don't really see that all the time. So that's really the only reason I brought that one up. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the character sprites. Now I just wanted to go on to the announcement. So recently I finally gotten moved into a new apartment. I've gotten all of my stuff taken out and set up, and I actually finally got the new Pokemon game Legends Arceus in the mail. So I decided, wouldn't it be fun if I went ahead and streamed it for you guys, because I'm going to be playing it anyways. But then that way you can at least see and hang out a little bit, instead of me just not posting videos for a while because I'm just absorbed into that game. So I'm not going to be putting it on my YouTube channel here because I don't want to be flooding, my educational content with me just playing video games. But I'm going to have a link in the description below to my Twitch channel, and if you want to hang out there and watch me play some Pokemon or maybe some other games as they come up, I'll be on there every once in a while. Alright, well that's pretty much it for the video, so thank you guys for sticking around, and let me know in the comments down below if you have any requests of videos you'd like to see next, or just what you think in general. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.